Thanks all. We'll go ahead and get started here today. Welcome again to Motz365, best practices for maintaining your synthetic turf field and running track. I'll be your host, Nick Maynard, Director of Services for the Motz Group. We'll be joined with Keith Back, Senior Turf Care Expert, and Alan Wolf, Field Consultant for the Carolinas. Once again, Nick Maynard, Director of Services. A little bit about my background. Started in the synthetic turf maintenance industry about 10 years ago. I owned and operated my own business focused on the synthetic turf maintenance and also running track cleaning. A little bit about Motz. So we started a little over 45 years ago, primarily in the landscape industry. We then moved over to natural field construction. And then when synthetic turf came to the market, we got into that business as well. So we have about 110 employees to date. We are an ESOP, so every employee that you interact with is a owner of the company. Worldwide, we have a little over 750 fields in the ground worldwide. So we've got several natural fields in other continents. Primarily, most of our fields are in the US, from high performance natural fields and synthetic fields. Primarily, we're focused here today to talk about maintenance. So we've performed a little over 4,000 maintenance visits to date since the inception of our service group. And we are licensed in your area in North and South Carolina. A little bit more about what we offer at the Motz Group. So on our product and service portfolio, we have our synthetic turf construction group. We've got a little bit around about 600 synthetic fields in the ground to date. On the natural side, we've got various professional fields from the Rockies to the Braves to also some Major League Soccer fields in the US. We also have an AirPat system, which is a vacuum ventilation system. What we're here to discuss today is our field and track maintenance group. So we'll do a deep dive on those two business units for our company throughout this webinar. Our in-play system. So you'll see a lot of these in-play systems in parks or rec facilities. They're 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. They got like a little wall ball, a netting system to keep all the balls inside the structure. Our project management group, so we can do design in-house with our employee owners. Every project manager that you interact with is a Motz Group owner. On our product side, so we've seen that a lot of the synthetic market has sand rubber. We actually produce a couple different other products distributed throughout the entire company. So Envirofill is a coated sand product, and a Safe Shell is a walnut product as well. So quick agenda for today. We're going to hit on critical grooming practices. Keith Back is going to handle that. I'll take it back over and do kind of a deep dive on our annual deep cleanings and field assessments. We'll touch on performance testing. We'll look at signs of aging in the field and solutions of aging in the field. And then we'll wrap it up with our track maintenance side of things. And then we'll kick it over to Q&A. Just a reminder, as we do this webinar, please ask questions throughout. We'll hit all the questions at the end. So please share that in the chat and we'll filter those out and discuss at the end and give you some questions at the end. So if you were to buy, a turf field from the Motz Group with our warranty, we state in our warranty that we've got 24 hours to get to our customers if there's a play critical response. So a lot of customers ask, hey, can we do a repair ourselves? There's no need to do that because we will be on your field within 24 hours. We've kind of mentioned 4,000 visits along the synthetic maintenance side of things. Last year alone, we performed 500 plus services last year throughout the 9-state area. So we'll go to Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, North and South Carolina. We also have offices in Indianapolis, Cleveland, Cincinnati is our headquarters, and then we also have an office in the Charlotte area. I'll kick it over to Keith Back, and he'll handle the critical grooming practices.
Thank you, Nick. Welcome, everyone. My name's Keith Back. A little bit of history about myself. Been with the company now for a little over 20 years, and was fortunate enough to be with us during the inception of our maintenance program back in about 2007. So I've been a huge part of those 4,000 field visits, and a lot of what we're learning or discussing today is what we have learned through those years. So what's best practices and how to take care and maintain these fields to get the longevity out of them that we need. So this left side picture here is kind of giving general practices on driving. What we want to make sure that we do is follow the best practices laid out by our field installer. So if those, we want to follow our seaming plans and not go goal line to goal line. We want to go sideline to sideline on these fields when we're grooming. So there's a couple of critical factors in there. But if you don't know what your layout is, we can definitely look at those fields, kind of give you the layout of those and the best grooming directions to follow, whether it's a soccer, football field, baseball fields come in different directions. So we definitely want to follow that layout pattern that you have on your individual field. So we base our grooming practices on 40 hours of play, which is about equivalent to every 2 weeks that you would groom your field. This can go higher or lower depending on the activities. If you're looking at rec fields through the summer, might be we might tighten that up a little bit. If they're getting used all day long, you're going to hit that 40 hours of play pretty quickly. But again, we don't want to overgroom these fields. We want to certainly think about that 40 hours of play on those. So if we look here, we've got a baseball field layout. Again, those patterns are specific to your field. This one would be laid out from home plate to center field. I've seen them laid out from home to down first base foul line, carrying across that way, or laid out from home to third base foul line. So again, being specific onto your field, what you're looking at is pretty critical. So one of the most effective ways to protect our fields is adding infill. So if whatever type of infill you have, whether it is sand rubber infill, an EnviroFill coated sand, or some of the safe shells that we see out there, adding that infill into your high wear areas is really critical. A lot of the wear patterns that we see on these fields are caused by practices going on, that repetition through the week. So we want to make sure that we are adding infill, maintaining those infill levels throughout the week, and prepping them in for the weekend. So if you have a tournament weekend, we want to make sure that we top those levels off as well. We typically lacrosse creases, soccer penalty spots, soccer corner kicks, baseball second base slides, batters boxes, softball pitcher, band camps. Those are ones that we regularly see hitting those hash marks. So we want to make sure that we're topping those infill levels off throughout the week as necessary. So if we look here, like I said, one of the things that we want to be conscious about is that 40 hours of groom, um, or 40 hours of play before grooming. That we don't want to over groom these fields, but yet we do need to do some grooming on them. If we look at that lower right-hand picture there, we see a lot of that infill that is scattered around the second base. That is all protecting that area around there. It's a little bit heavy behind the second base bag there. And we see that big clear area right in front. That's the slide pit coming into second base. So you might see that around, say, a soccer penalty kick, where you get the plant foot and the sweep through on the penalty spot. Those areas, we want to make sure that we're bringing that infill back into those areas. If we think about low infill levels, that allows the wear to be lower on the fiber. And eventually that fiber is going to break off, causing a bigger area to be needing to be replaced. So, timing is key when we're grooming. So the time of day, we want to be early in the morning while the field is cool. If the sun is directly high noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the field has the ability to stretch. So depending on your piece of equipment, whether you're using a Gator or a Kubota RTV, those front wheels can actually push the turf and stretch the field, and you might get wrinkles or pull lines out, what have you. So we just want to be aware of that. We're looking for about a 10-yard turning radius. Any tighter than that, those front wheels are pushing on that. The field can be wet. It can rain overnight. It can have dew on it in the morning. We just don't want to be doing it in the rain. Just no need to be out there. If you're scheduled to service it, you might hold off till the following day, or just hold off and push it till the next week. Again, we don't want to over groom them, just groom because. But if you're in that time period and it's raining, just push it out. Speeds, we're looking at about 3 to 5 miles an hour. 3 is pretty good. 4 and 5, you get those turns are a little, again, aggressive and pushing on that turf. The down pressure of your groomer is critical as well. We always want that groomer supported by the wheels. We always want those wheels turning. We don't want to just set it out there to lift the wheels up and start grooming. That aggressiveness is wearing on those fibers more than it should, and can pull wrinkles or pull inlays out over time. And again, you might not see the effects of over aggressive grooming right away, but it shows up later in the life of these fields. So if you get a lot of loose seams, inlays pulling out, again, that's caused from either low infill or aggressive grooming over time. Here we have some do's and don'ts of fields. Chewing gum, seeds, drinking soda with a lot of the Gatorades, what have you. Wearing metal spikes is a big one on baseball fields, but sunflower seeds are just darn near impossible to get out of these fields. If you're using a lawn sweeper or anything like that, you tend to get more infill than you do sunflower seeds. Even our machines, we do not get 100% of those. They will fall through sifting trays. So the unfortunate part is if you're getting 100%, you're also getting a lot of infill pulling off with that. So we want to make sure to leave as much infill out in these fields as possible. Drinking sodas, Gatorades, anything like that. Red Gatorades, you got to watch out for. They will stain the white lines. So we don't use those if we can avoid them. The sugars in those attract bees, bugs, what have you. So we try to avoid all of that as we can. Dumping those Gatorades or water jugs out on the field will displace that infill. So we want to make sure that we're aware of that. If we need to bring infill and add to it, or bring that infill back into that location, make sure that we do that. If we can dump those outside facilities is a better practice. Metal spikes. So I talked about that on baseball fields. Making sure that teams know that like up against the pitching rubber is a really high wear area. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that on a daily basis, adding that infill back in. If you think of natural fields where we had to pack that clay in there every day, kind of doing the same thing with that infill. Where you're right-handed, we see more right-handed batters. So that right-handed batter's box gets hit really hard, that rear foot on there. Where they're digging, and making sure that we address that with infill on a daily practice. Outdoor training classrooms, so no weights on the fields. CrossFit Games was a big one that kind of took over by storm. They were bringing out medicine balls, kettlebells, slamming those down. A lot of times you'll see base issues caused by those. So making sure that if they are doing that, if you're holding the event, they can put those on plywood or what have you, just to protect that base in the field. It's not so much damage in the fibers, it's more so in the base. Events, stages, graduations on these fields. We don't want cars driving out onto these, but making sure that the stages are protected. The feet on those need to be up on a platform, whether it's plywood or plastic deck, something of that sort. Metal chairs sitting out on these fields, making sure that the feet on those chairs are protected, so they're not digging in, cutting fibers, or worse, cutting the backing of your field. Make sure that those are protected. Any of those chairs, if they are steel and they sit out on these fields, they will rust overnight, and you'll see that residue left on white lines. It's not so prominent on the green, but you will see where they sat on the whites. Just be aware of that. And then, like I said earlier, just not driving onto the field. So time clocks, a lot of times you'll see time clocks, trailers set out on the field, making sure if they do drive out there that they're protected by some sort of platform. Again, like the plywood or plastic deck. Life squads don't need to drive out there unless it's absolutely life-saving event. Just want to be aware of that, that will damage your drainage system, what have you, cause bigger issues down the road. And with that, that is all I have. I will pass that back over to Nick.
Great job, Keith. Thank you. Notice a couple folks joined us a little bit later, so kind of reiterating, we do have a Q&A session, so if you see at the bottom of your screen, feel free to ask questions. We'll answer that at the end of the webinar. Keith mentioned what you guys can do for your fields. I kind of want to hit on what we can do for you. We highly recommend that you'd have a professional service come through and service your fields annually. So our annual deep clean and field assessment consists of the first step is a springtime rake. So we know that your field becomes hard depending on the usage, the climate, the type of infill that you have. We'll use the springtime rake to actually decompact your infill. The next step through our process is we'll run a magnet over your field. Keith mentioned you'll have different types of events. You'll have graduation. We've seen prom on there. We've seen concerts. When folks are deconstructing these stages, there might be a bolt or a screw that's left behind. We'll actually run a magnet and it's extract any ferrous metal out of the field. Just protecting your athletes with that step. Next step is cleaning and grooming of your field. So we've got a picture here in the middle of our equipment going over a field. Within that machine, there's a mechanical brush that hits the top of the turf, hits the top of the infill, and flips up any foreign material inside the machine. There's a series of sieves in there that shake and vibrate. They disperse back the infill, leaving the foreign objects within the machine, and we discard that at the end. Last step to that is grooming. So the back of the machine has a brush, and we'll run it the same direction that Keith mentioned earlier. The next step after we're cleaning, we'll disinfect with an antimicrobial spray across the entire synthetic surface. Once your field is clean, we'll go to performance testing. So performance testing is a GMAX. If you're unfamiliar with the GMAX test, this is a shock attenuation test. It's a weighted hammer. If you see on the left-hand side picture, it's a weighted hammer dropped at about 24 inches. We get a readout to figure out how soft or hard your field is playing. This really drives safety requirements. So there's an industry standard. 200 is the number. Anything above 200 is unsafe to play on. So we want to ensure that your fields are playing safe. This also drives maintenance requirements. So we'll look at the GMAX results, and we can recommend if we need to maybe remove some rubber in some areas if it's too soft. We can add some sand to firm up your field, or we can actually look at decompaction if your field is too hard. This also helps with the replacement planning process. So we'll see on the next couple of slides, we'll talk about aging of fields, but this actually drives replacement planning. So we'll see the life of your field, it gets a little harder and harder. Your GMAX results will increase over the life of your field. The very last step of the entire annual deep clean process is you'll be given a maintenance report. So Alan will hand deliver these to your field, walk the field, and kind of go over this report with you. This report goes over the steps we took. So we'll look at any inlays, any seams, any logos, make sure that they're still intact and holding on your field. We'll disperse your type of infill over those high wear areas that Keith mentioned. We've got pictures of the steps that we took. We also have pictures of the debris that we removed, the ferrous metal that we extracted out of your field. The third image on the screen is our GMAX test report. So you see that there's 10 different locations. So with the GMAX, we look at these 10 different locations. We drop at each location 3 drops, developing an average over the field. And then the last page on the document is our historical information of your field. So as we maintain your field every year, this document will live and grow. So you'll actually see when we perform the service and then what your GMAX was that for that particular year. You'll tend to see that GMAX will increase over time. So as your field ages, these are some key signs that your field is getting older and you want to take some steps to fix these signs. So loose seams is a big sign of aging of your field. There's 2 ways that your field can be seen, either a stitch seam or a glued seam. Glued is the highest standard of synthetic field. That's all that we do with the Motz group. We'll also look for torn inseams. So we'll see that hash marks, logos will start to pull away from your turf field. As your fiber ages, it'll start to break down depending on the climate where your field is at, the play that your field sees, your fiber will start to break down. Once that fiber breaks down, you'll see a reduction in infill in those high wear areas. And mentioned earlier, you'll see that your Gmax ratings will start to increase as your field gets a little bit older. So what do you do when you see that your field is aging? There's several things that you can do. Keith mentioned adding infill to these high wear areas. So these penalty kick areas, soccer kickoffs, these sliding pits for baseball. You want to be on top of that and adding the infill into those appropriate areas. The next step, if you don't do that, you might have some issues on your seaming or your inlays. These will be pulled or detached from your surface. We can come back, repair these areas, and also glue them back down. The last step is most invasive before actually replacing your entire field. You'll see a picture at the right side of the screen here. Replacement of these areas. So we'll actually come through, test the areas to determine with the Gmax if it's too hard, if it's above 200, we'll kind of delineate our area of removal and patchwork. So we'll extract the existing turf, take that out, discard of that. We'll seam in new turf, put any lines or markings back into that area, and then topping back off with your field's infill. Now we've kind of discussed on the turf side. We understand that your turf is a large investment for you, your student athletes, and your community. We understand that there's another big investment right outside that field is the track side. So there's different reasons why customers clean. Primarily, number one is safety. So you'll see the life of your track surface, those rubber granules will start to silt in. Reasons being you have improper drainage, you've got tree-lined areas where you don't have so much sunlight drying of your track, so that sediment just sits. It silts in those rubber granules, resulting in a slippery surface. We've also seen that we've cleaned after material issues. So if you've got a polyurethane track, that polyurethane oxidizes over time. We can extract that oxidation from the track surface. You'll see natural disasters, so flooding events, hurricanes, things of that nature. We can clean up after those events, those unfortunate situations. And then performance would be a big reason why customers clean. So we can actually test pre and post cleaning of your running track surface. We've seen that after you clean, we can actually increase the performance of your running track. So that actually is a skid resistant test. We can actually bring back the friction. More friction, it means a faster surface. So a picture, say 1,000 words. This is a great picture that we show a lot of our customers. This is a track down in Houston, Texas. This we did a couple of years ago. If you look at the lane markings, you look at 1 and 2, you'll start to see that those areas have started silting in. Either it might be on a level area. That water will run from lane 7. Typically, the water should shed from lane 7 to lane 1. You'll see that on this customer's track, they've got some natural grass there that inhibits the water to flow off of the surface, creating a dirty area over there in lane 1 and 2. So what we do with this process is we use high pressure heated water with a recovery system. We introduce about 16.5 gallons a minute, depending on the pressure, 14 to 1600 psi, and then we extract all that dirty water with a high capacity blower. That water will go back to our trailer at the top of this picture. It'll go through a series of filtration and settlement process. And then the next picture is the after of the results. So this picture, we did not reline this track. This was strictly just cleaning with no solvents or detergents. Like we mentioned earlier, this is a huge investment for your organization. Cleaning and maintaining these surfaces goes a long way. Next up, we wanted to kind of highlight our case study. So our case study, this is the last service that we performed. We completed this project about 2 to 3 weeks ago for the city of Mebane, North Carolina. What this project was, this customer had a organic infill. Organic infill has got some great properties, but has a little bit more maintenance tied with it. So we came through, we repaired several goal boxes, high wear areas, and then topped both of these fields off with a organic infill product. And the last step that we did, we did our annual condition service across both fields. It was a great win for our customer. We had a great testimonial from our customer, Aaron Davis, on the next slide. Aaron mentioned that the Motz team did a great job planning of the field with execution and training. We were very responsive to the unique needs. A couple things that Aaron mentioned in his quote, which is great to bring up for the group, is our training. So after we would perform a new build for you, or after a service, we could train you and your staff on some important topics on how to maintain your field. They also had a large event that they had to get ready for. We were able to mobilize quickly, get all the material to the site, and incorporate it into the field right in time before one of their largest events. So we appreciate the partnership with Aaron and his team. Wanted to kind of open up for Q&A. I know we got some questions in here. We can go ahead and Alan, if you want to grab these.
Yeah, thanks, Nick and Keith. You all can probably hear why I haven't spoke much throughout this webinar so far, but I will help facilitate this Q&A session. First question. So we typically groom our football stadium field sideline to sideline, but what would you recommend for raking? I don't know if Keith or Nick, you want to take.
Yeah, so great question. So raking, I'm making sure that we're talking about timing as well. So I would only do that once or twice a year. When you are deep tining your field, you are pulling on those inlays. So being aware of that, we definitely don't want to over time these fields, as you will start pulling up inlays, and can be bad. So if you are tining, you're going to consider or carry that the same pattern as you do on your grooming. So sideline to sideline, and then carry that out through your end zones.
Thanks, Keith. I think we may have covered this, but next question is, are you able to provide in-person maintenance training to our facilities personnel?
Yes. So just reach out to us. We can look at scheduling that, either Alan or myself. We can get that on the schedule. Best practices are to have your grooming equipment on site and the main people that would be involved in your field. So football, soccer, if you're talking about baseball, softball fields, making sure that coaches are available, and then anything that we can help you with in that.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. How do you remove leaves and debris from the field without disrupting infill?
Another good question. So you can do a couple of different ways. Leaves, if you're using blowers, we just want to make sure that we're not directing that down at our feet, that'll displace that infill really quick. So make sure that you keep that out at about a 45-degree angle to move that out. You can use rakes to gather that up, put that into bags or whatever you're using there. If you're using leaf sweepers, like a lawn sweeper, with a bag collection system, we want to make sure that we just have that low enough to pick up the debris, that we don't get a lot of infill out. If you do take a lot of infill, when you do and you check it, you might throw that out into a highway area. The debris will sit on top of the fibers, and then you can make a couple of passes cleaning that up, but that will leave that infill out on the field itself. So that's a big thing, is just make sure that we're not removing infill during these processes.
Thanks, Keith. Another kind of along the same lines that you were just talking about. How do I add infill to my highway areas of my field?
Yep. So Nick talked about soccer penalty kicks and lacrosse creases, what have you, second base slides. You're kind of putting those in two different ways. So on a penalty spot, you might take whatever type of infill you have, dump it out on that infill, or I'm sorry, on the penalty spot, say, and you might use your hand to get that in, to get that worked into the fibers. If lacrosse creases, those bigger areas, I tend to chicken feed those out and let the players work that in. You can definitely use brooms, push brooms, what have you. A really stiff bristled broom moves infill really well. So if we go back to the picture that on that second base slide area where there was a lot behind the bag, we could take a push broom, push that back into that slide pit, and then kind of level that out and take a blower, just kind of blend it all in.
Thank you. Nick, I think you might have touched on this, but maybe just reiterate for the purposes of the webinar here. Are there any performance benefits to track cleaning?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Yeah, there actually is. So there's a test that we can do. It's a skid resistant test. So it's a rubber boot that basically we set up on the track surface. It's dropped at a certain height and it skids across the actual surface, so that we get a readout of the friction that boot sees across the surface. So we would test before we clean, perform the cleaning, and then do a testing after we clean, and we can actually increase the friction. So the more friction you have, the faster your surface would be.
Thanks, Nick. I think last one's, how do you manage invasive weeds that grow into the turf?
There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can use commercial Roundup. It is safe for the field. If you need a less aggressive, but you have to do it more often, is the Dawn dishwashing soap and vinegar. So you have to apply that multiple times, but it will work as well.
Yeah, I think the point there too is just to spot spray those areas, right? We don't want to put anything in a 100-gallon tank and spray it, from a weed killer perspective over top the entire surface. If you do have those weeds, you can spot spray those areas. But appreciate you all joining today. If there's anything that we didn't cover, if you have any additional questions, all of our contact information is on the bottom left of this screen. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.